moment. I want to lead off the questions with one of my own. So you mentioned that effortlessness is one of the 4 characteristics of correction. What are the other 3?
This is on my website. It's all free. Warmth, softening, which I prefer over relaxation. You get a reduction in muscular activity. Warmth toward the surface, which is an indication that the blood is returning to the surface. So if I twist your finger, it'll go white and cold. It's like saying, let go, you correct it idiomotorically, and it blushes. Remember, and I'll say to my patients are in sniffs. I say, remember when you were young enough to blush? Oh, yeah. And I say, you could feel how hot your face was getting. When I blush, I look like a stop sign for everything. But that is the rise of blood to the surface. You aren't blushing here, but they'll begin to report warmth all over. Let's see, that's 2. Effortlessness, blah, blah. Surprise. No plan, no willful intent. Dan has written a wonderful essay called Wes. Wes is more. Warmth, effortlessness, surprise, and softening. I forget these. And those are the 4 characteristics of correction. The patient may not experience all 4 of these at the same time, but if they experience 2 or 3, that's enough.
Okay. I'm going to come by the microphone here for those of us, for our online participants. So we have a question that came in actually at the start of your presentation from one of our online participants. Brent Jackson asks, what cautions do you recommend to massage therapists to prevent them from diagnosing pain sources, albeit chronic versus undiagnosed chronic pain, from pathogen or infection?
I don't think that you can know to a great extent whether or not something is injured or has a pathogen unless you offer it some treatment. It's a conceit of the orthopedic community that you're supposed to know everything before you begin. But an internal medicine manual, your stomach's bothering you, here, take this, call me tomorrow. Let's see how treatment affects you. I will diagnose on the basis of my treatment. I think that when it comes to diagnosis, and I can find that to the physician, I don't do any diagnosis because nobody pays me enough to do that. My insurance companies won't cover my diagnosing things. When people have pain, however, I figure there are 4 origins to pain. I ask my patients, can you alter your pain with position or use? Oftentimes I don't have to ask them because they're in a wheelchair, they're limping. I don't have to ask them, I already know this. I'm set to go. That's the thing I can treat. I treat their central sensitization, whatever, by acting in a non-threatening fashion. This is the best I can do because I'm not a social worker. I mentioned that before?
All right, now, so do we have some additional questions from the audience right now?
Yes.
Right up front here, let's bring a microphone.
Robin Trachtenberg. I just wanted to ask, what does your physical therapy interaction with your patients look like? Is like once you kind of break down the bridges of, I'm not going to do any magic with you.
Touching
Touching
and their movement, which sometimes is not visible to but it's palpable. I often use the analogy of poker, which is an increasingly popular pursuit, right? What's the primary skill of the poker player? To see the small motions revealing the thoughts of their opponent. They're called tells in poker, and there are whole books on tells out there, tons of books on tells, videos on tells. When the guy looks away at a certain moment, that means that the timing, all of this. There was a show out there called Poker Dome, where the players were all behind. I watch this like 2 o'clock in the morning. The players are all behind a one-way screen, so they can't see the audience at all, and every card is available. They're all wired and they're available to the audience. But they also put the heart monitors on the poker players, and they'd be like 170, a minute, and the guy's just sitting there like this, which is real healthy. 170 minutes, okay, if you're a young person on a treadmill for a brief period of time, but not if you're just a sitting around guy. That's like this was an advertisement for unhealthy activity. Is poker a painful pursuit? Talk to poker players. It hurts like crazy. It hurts to play well. Many of them suffer horribly because they have not moved any motorically. Why do the massage therapists troop into the poker parlors? I saw this on TV. There was a whole special about it, and I've seen it in casinos, where they troop into the poker parlors and rub the necks and shoulders of the poker players at $100 a pop. Why do they do that? because there's money available, so there's $100 right there, and they hurt because they have not moved in a fashion. What happens when you're playing poker and you move the way you want to? You start to lose. Okay, so it's a painful pursuit. But so is sitting around in a room like this. It's a painful pursuit. How many of you wanted to stand up after 10 minutes? Yeah. Why didn't you stand up? Culture. Culture, because I'm still talking. Because somebody next to you go, where the hell are you going? Yeah. It drives us all the time, and we see examples of it on candid camera all over the place. We need to break through that. So it doesn't look like I've done much except, and how many of my patients want to be countercultural anyway? Many of them want to be. Many of them want to be. How many in here do something creatively each day? Something unique? That's a small percentage. You see what I mean? Where did that go? When people say gardening relaxes me, do they mean the work of gardening? It doesn't relax me, but when I express myself in my garden through my gardening, then I start to soften. That, we all got ways. Writing relaxes me. Yes.
So do you give homework? I hate that
certainly,
word, but
yeah.
how do you
Feldenkrais
teach patients to
exercise.
follow some of the things you do with your hands when you're not with them, providing
I don't
that
know
safe
which way they're going to
environment?
move in the future.
Okay.
What do they want to do? What do you want to do right now? What do you want to do right now?
So is it
You're
mostly-
looking at me, you're talking, and you're looking at me. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. What do you want to do? You won't do it. You see what I mean? Too many people around you. Well,
Making
there
a lot
are.
of
What do you want to do?
assumptions
What do you want to do? And that's not it. You see what I mean? What would a 2-year-old do? They'd move the way they wanted to. Let's return. Let's go back. Let's let ourselves move. Dose yourself with that motion. Do it for 30 seconds at a time. There's my motion. I dose myself with that, I don't have any trouble. I'm fine. Am I moving? Which portion of my nervous tissue am I moving? Every portion. Every portion. Yes. I'm sorry.
You had a question?
Yeah, that's not going to work particularly well.
All right, we do have time for just a couple more. So I've got one up here, up front here. Who else is up? Okay, starting right here.
2 questions. So do you do any regular sort of traditional physical therapy type of mobilizations, or is it just the simple
No.
contact and the idiomotoric?
No, my original training in 1974 was at Stanley Paris's 9-day manipulation course in Montreal. I remember sitting there thinking, I want to teach this course one day, and I want to be invited to the San Diego Pain Summit run by in 2004. And I actually thought that, and for several years I worked with Paris, and I was the original clinician, the senior clinician at the back clinic. I dropped all of that in about 1980 and just began pursuing what I called inherent motion at the time. Idiomotion, as I came to understand it, existed.
Okay, and then several years
Few other
ago,
things happened in there.
I missed your workshop in Arizona. I think it was the last time you were out. How
Long
many
time
people
ago.
does it take to get you to come to a workshop?
How much money have you got? Well, I don't deal with such things. I do, you know, the organizer has to figure out, Raj, I'm not going to talk to you about that, but anybody wants to invite me, I'm free. I'm not currently invited anywhere. Well, I was invited to Portugal earlier today, but I hope I don't have to go there. I'd like to go to Cleveland. That would be really nice. I could drive there. I have taught a lot for cross country or whatever, and some of the cross country, most of the cross country courses were for people just desperate to get away from their god awful jobs, and they couldn't constantly care, and that's the way it was. They're horrible. This is great. You people actually want to be here, and that's the way it's been the last couple of years. People who actually, therapists who actually want to understand what I've worked in 30 different skilled nursing facilities. That's around a low number. I've worked in more than that. Most of the therapists there had no idea what they were doing. And that's just simple, just the fact. They didn't want to talk to me about it, that's for sure. I don't know what it is about me. So. But I think it was the tie. They didn't like that.
So another.
One more question.
Hi, my name's Connie Posigi, and I was wondering, how do you give people the self-confidence to be able to be free to be self-corrective?
That can be, it's the most difficult job to get people to be themselves. Be yourself. Who the hell is that? But I'm only asking for a physical manifestation of their own desire to move for a few seconds at a time. Regularly dose yourself with that. A surprising number, okay, I will do that. I have to go in the bathroom at home because they'll laugh at me otherwise, which is both funny and sad at the same time. We're never allowed to be ourselves. But aren't we born being ourselves? Aren't we enculturated at the age of 2? What was if I were a rich man, is not the point. Tradition. Traditionally, how do we behave? Billy Crystal on Saturday Night Live, you look marvelous. You look marvelous. And every other episode he would say, I'm not feeling good, but that's okay. In my business, it's much more important to look marvelous than to feel marvelous. And there it is. We're not in the business. As I said to a therapist one day, why don't you just become a hairdresser and get it over with? You know, and she never talked after that. So. I don't say that anymore, but that's all. Just wanted the patients to look better. I don't care what they look like. That's bigotry, for heaven's sakes. I care about whether or not they're being themselves. And there's a way of adding that to physical therapy. Certainly.
There was one other question that came up earlier today. And there was a question about the relationship or similarity of your work to what some people have experienced in Feldenkrais.
Feldenkrais always choreographed his motions. And he handled people much more, when he did functional integration, where he would handle people, he would take over the work of the muscle. He would work the muscle. Well, I think that's a mistake. What he needed to do was let the nervous system alter the muscular activity itself. Not that he didn't do spectacular work. And I spent 4 days with Feldenkrais himself in 1980. I'm so old that I was actually able to go to a workshop he did in the Poconos in 1980. And I spent 4 days watching him work. And this was before any of the neuroscience occurred, and it totally transformed me, really transformed me. But Feldenkrais himself did not employ simple contact. He would do the work for the patient instead. He would move them passively. I don't move people passively.
Do we have any last questions?
Oh.
There's one.
It's okay. He turned off the...
It's just one question. What do you mean by not threaten the patient?
Don't threaten them.
Yeah, don't threaten the
Oh,
patient.
yeah?
Yeah, not that you
Does
should
anybody here
be
understand
threatening.
why you would ask such a question?
No, but what do you mean by don't threaten the patient? How would we normally threaten the patient in your perspective?
Oh, God, therapists do it all the time. Everybody sits up, yeah, you know, they sit up real straight as soon as I walk in the room. It's like your major, like the sergeant just walked in the, it's terrible, you know, and you see this all the time. And therapists are proud of the fact that people act differently. They act more enculturated when the therapist is around. They're threatening the patient. That's what I mean by not threatening the patient. Let them be themselves. Bartenders don't threaten you, do they? Well, the bartender is threatening, he won't be a bartender very long. Be a friend. Be a friend to their musculature. And we know people who are perfectly fine people, but they don't have any friends because they can't shut up. You know, they don't ever listen. Well, that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.